Hi, in this video I'm gonna show you how I made this loop animation in Natron and a few techniques that may be useful for your animations. For instance, stars in the sky, a rolling background, some project optimization tips, and more. If you want to follow along or just take a look at the final project, you can download all the necessary files using the link in the description below. Let's get to it. I'll start by setting up a project. I press S on my keyboard to open the project settings panel. And I'll go with 800 by 800 pixels, which is not much, but will help Natron run a bit faster. If you want to set up some dimensions that are not presented in the presets, you can just click at the new format button and create a size that you want. I want 800 pixels in the width, 800 in the height, and I will call it 800 pixels square. The frame rate 25 is okay for me, and the frame range, the duration of this project, will be 75 frames, which makes precisely 3 seconds long. When it's done, close this panel and create some stars in the sky. I will use the noise node. Let's connect it to the viewer and see what's going on. By default, this node already has 5 different noise types. I will use the salt pepper type because it resembles little stars in the sky the most. The sigma parameter corresponds to the density of noise. The higher is this value, the more noise you have, the more stars you have. I will go with 0.02, but it's a matter of your taste and it can be adjusted later on. We still need to deal with the size and the color of our stars, but while we are in the noise node, let's make sure that the noise is not changing on each frame. Because right now, if you scroll through the timeline or just preview the scene, you will see that the pattern is changing on each and every frame. For our stars, we don't need that, and it's easy to fix just by activating static seed feature. Now, if you preview, you see that throughout all the timeline, all the project, the noise pattern is staying static. If for some reason you don't like the composition of this noise, the positioning of the stars, you can change the seed parameter, which is basically the random kind of placement. Random composition will appear on each and every value, and you can just find something that works better for you. But I suggest to leave it as it is right now, and then when we have the final composition with additional images, we can come back here and see what works better. Now let's increase the size of the stars a bit. I'll do it by adding age extend node. Let's connect it to the noise and viewer to this new node. By changing these parameters, you can reach different kind of results. There are also different filter types. I guess you need to increase the image to see how it's affecting the noise. I'll go with the quadratic filter type, and for the size I'll set up 3, and for slices 10. It looks kind of a sharp circle, not that sharp, not that blurred. I think that's okay. Since the whole composition is kind of comical, I think these oversized stars are working best. And finally, let's give the right color to the stars. I'll do it simply by adding 2 solids, by merging 2 solids one over another, while masking it with this noise that we just created. Let me show you what I mean. I'll make one black solid, another one. I just press Ctrl C, Ctrl V to copy that. I'll set up the white color, but again, you can choose whatever color you like, merge them one over another. B for black solid for the big background, A for the white solid, the color of our stars, and I connect mask input to the H extend node. Right now let's connect the viewer to the merge node and see what happens. We see nothing, sadly, but that's because our noise is not outputting alpha channel, and the information that comes into mask input into the merge node is simply useless. See, this channel, alpha channel, is empty. So let's correct that. In the merge node, the mask is activated. It takes the information from alpha channel. And if we connect our viewer to the stars and see what's going on in the alpha channel, we see that nothing is here. Let's go back in the noise node. Let's set up the viewer to RGB and make sure here in this noise node that alpha is being outputted as well. This is where we can see that right now we're outputting information of red, green, and blue channels. Activate alpha. Now if we connect to the extend node and see what's going on alpha channel, I just press A on my keyboard. It's a shortcut for showing alpha channel information. Oops, sorry. Now we output alpha. Let's come back to our merge node. Here we have it. We have our white stars. Let's select this group of nodes and add a backdrop node to keep it organized. And we can call it stars. Nice. And let's make this rolling hills background now. I'll start with another solid and give it a nice blue color. I press tab to show up this menu with effects. I choose solid, press 1 to connect the viewer, select something like this. Then I'll make a circle mask using Rota Node. Right now I don't care much about the upper and the lower points of the masks, but I want the left and the right point to stay as close to the edge of this image as possible. You will see why in a bit. Don't forget to pre-multiply to get rid of the image outside the mask, and close this panel to get rid of the controllers. Nice, so we have this kind of circle. And now where the fun begins. I will add tile node, which is somewhere here. And you can see that it's pretty fun to play with. You have some parameters for amount of the copies of your object in rows and columns, some other settings. I will just set up what I need, which is 1 column and 4 in a row. Let's make this thing move. I will animate it by adding a roll node connected to the whole object. You can modify X and Y values. I don't need to mess with the vertical position, so I will leave it untouched, and I will animate just the X value. On the very first frame, set up a keyframe, go to the last frame, and now we need those circles to end up in the exact same position as they are on the first frame. I know that the width of this comp is 800 pixels. I will just need to set a negative value so that it moves in the right direction with 800 pixels. The position of the circles is identical on the very first and the last frame, which is good but can be better. With the roll node selected, I go to the dope sheet, I press F to fit all the keyframes in the range of my view, and I will just offset 1 frame ahead so that we don't have the very same frame repeated, so it doesn't come twice. We begin the animation over here, and if the value is equal on the very last frame, we kind of have the last frame and then the first frame repeated. And to avoid that, we move this last frame one frame forward, which in a loop animation essentially becomes frame 0, and thus we have a perfectly animated loop that has no jumps, and it's just going smoothly, endlessly, like in a cool move. If you come back to a Rota node and modify this mask, the keyframe will be created automatically. Personally, after modifying this mask, I prefer to hit this button to delete all the animation of this shape. And now, after this modification, can be something like this maybe, you can see how each duplicate of this titled rolling shape has changed. And finally, let's just fill out the hole on the bottom of this background and adjust the position of it all so that we like it. I'll do it by adding just one more solid of the same color. It's one of the presets blue colors. I will merge it with our heels, with our tilted object, and just I press T as a hotkey to add transform node. I will make it smaller and change its position. And I think I will need to add one more transform node to the object on top to place it a bit lower. So now, as you preview, you see this kind of rolling mountains or hills, whatever it is. Let's name it all again with the backdrop node and call it hills. This technique is pretty cool because it can work with an image as well, this tile replication and this rolling effect, like I've done it with the rock in the final animation. Let me show you exactly how it's been done. Import the image of the rock with the help of read node, R on the keyboard as a shortcut. Here it is, it's a PNG. Let me put it over here and connect it to the background right away so we can see what kind of trouble we run into while connecting the rock image of the different format over our main composition. Here we have it. Let's select the node and apply the roll node to it. If I scroll, all the movement, all the scrolling is happening in this box, in the area which is the format of this rock image. It's smaller than our 800 pixels composition. We need to deal with that. We just need to tell Natron the format of the image before it comes to the roll node. I'll simply do it by merging an image of the rock with a solid. This solid automatically will have the format of my project. If I add a merge node and connect it to the rock, it's all resolved. Now, if I change rolling value, you can see that the roll node inputs already the information with the right project format. Let's make this rock a bit smaller. And in this case, we need to change the rolling value a little bit. Maybe you've heard about this effect called parallax. Basically, it means that in real life, more distant objects move slower than the objects closer to us, closer to the camera. To fake a bit more the fact that the hills are far away, let's make the rock roll twice faster. Add a keyframe on the very first frame, the same 0, and go on the last frame and set up a negative 1600 pixels. The position of the rock is identical on the first and the last frame, which is exactly what we need, with one tiny adjustment. With the Rota Node selected, we go to the top sheet, make sure that the animated parameter is selected, press F to fit. It doesn't work. Well, normally it works. You press F to fit the keyframes to your area of the view, or just scroll the mouse wheel to increase the view. I select the very last keyframe and offset it to 1 frame forward. And now when the preview is loaded, we see that the rock is behaving perfectly in a loop. It's moving faster, giving this illusion kind of that the hills are located further away from us. In the final animation, I also added some color correction to this rock. I've done it with the corresponding node, color correct. I will just copy paste it from the project that I've already done. I will hold Ctrl or Command on Mac to insert it right to the node tree. Made it darker, offset it a little bit the darks, so it just fits better to this ridiculous and yet funny scene. We can already add the stars to this composition. Add one more merge node. We connect the B input, which is normally responsible for the background information, to the stars, since they should be behind everything. Connect A input to the hills. We immediately run into a problem because our stars show up in front of the hills. One of our solids is not outputting the alpha information. It's the solid on the bottom of the screen. Let's open it up and see that indeed output components of the image are just RGB channels, red, green and blue. Let's select the option that contains alpha. Check if the alpha here is complete. Not yet, because the merge node doesn't take into consideration that the A input has alpha. Activate it, boom, it's all corrected. The alpha is fully complete. And let's see the summary of our background. Connect our viewer over here. Let's see if the stars are showing up through the hills. No, it's all corrected, all good. Let's see once again what's going on here. We have the hills, the rolling hills, wonderful. We have the stars, nice. And we have the stars and the hills joined together, and we also have a rock that joined with the hills, but not with the hills and the stars together. We just need to connect B input to the summary of the background and A to the rock. Let's see what we have. Wonderful. It's stars, it's the hills, and it's the rock. And everything is rolling. This dotted line, which is a bounding box, that shows that there are some pixels outside the image format that Natron is processing while generating preview and stuff. Let's make it easier for Natron. Let's correct that. Add a reformat node. Okay, the format has changed. Select our preset 800 by 800, and we see that we successfully got rid of this additional information in the bounding box. If I press D to deactivate the node, I can see that the image format just is nice and clean with this node added. Well, we are getting there. However, a few elements are still missing. Let's bring our main hero to the comp. Once again, I will use the read node to do that. Navigate to the right folder and select the hero image. Let's merge it over the background right way to see better what's going on. Well, it's definitely huge. I will press T on my keyboard to add transform node, and I will scale it down quite a bit, something like that. I will also change the position, maybe something a bit up here. When the scale looks quite okay, we can adjust some certain things later on. Let's animate it. And first thing to remember is the same logic of a loop that has been applied to the rolling background and to the image of the rock. The first frame and the last frame should be exactly the same, with one frame adjustment in the end of the timeline. I prefer to separate the static values and the animated values, so I will press T once again to add one more transform node, and I will keep my animation over here. Let's start with the rotation. On the very first frame, we set up a keyframe, and on the last frame, we'll make sure that the hero makes the whole 360 degrees cycle. We'll need a negative value for it to rotate in the right direction, and compare the very first and the last frames. The image of the hero is exactly the same. With this node selected, open up a dope sheet once again, grab the last keyframe and adjust it one frame forward. And let's see now how this rotation loop is looking. We see this bounding box. Let's see if we can deal with it in our merge node. I will select here bounding box B value, which will use the format of our B input. And now we have the same loop, but without unnecessary pixels to process. When it's rotating in a nice loop, let's add some keyframes to the y-axis on its position, so that it would kind of hit the ground and jump up. We will animate Y value on the translate parameter, set a keyframe on the first, set a keyframe on the last frame of the comp, and then let's just find those frames when the hero needs to be on top, like high as possible, when it's flying over the rock. Then it hits the ground, something like this. Then it flies up again and comes nicely to the ground. It looks already like something that we need. However, it took me a while to adjust those keyframes to make it smoother, to make the animation a little bit more natural, even though as ironic as it is. I will not go through this adjustment process once again. I will just bring up a node that has already right values and show you what I've done. Here it is, this animation node. I will deactivate this one by pressing D, reconnect everything, and see what I have. I select it, I go to the curve editor. Right here, I need to select the animated position. Well, rotation is animated as well, but right now let's talk about the Y position. And what I've done, I smoothed out the animation, slightly changing the speed. Every dot here is representing a keyframe, and I just, by clicking it and activating those handles, I just played around until it looked as I wanted. Or here in this area, my hero was landing too soon. It was hitting the rock. I just duplicated this keyframe, and while maintaining its rotation, still for a few frames, it's holding on the exact level of the Y position. And when the rock passes and it's safe for hero to land, it lands on the ground without touching the rock. And with the rotation value, I've done something similar. Every time it hits the ground, it would rotate slightly faster after that moment. I've changed the handles a little bit, so every time it hits the ground, it rotates slightly faster, then it slows down with the rotation, hangs in the air, hits the ground, speeds up with the rotation again. Kind of replicates the impact of the hitting the ground. It's a tiny thing, but it doesn't hurt to have. It just always makes the animation look a little bit more natural. And let's add now the final element, the animated line. This effect resembles very much trim path effect in After Effects, something that's widely used in different styles of animation. And for that, I will need a Rota Node. And what is essential and very important for this effect, I will need to grab a pencil tool. Let's draw triangle over here, and I will cheat a little bit. I will not exactly connect the final dot, so it will be still like a line, not a shape, but because of the size of the line, it will be not visible, or because of the animation it will be hidden basically, so it's not that important. The shape looks nice, except we don't see anything. That's all right. First, connect it to our image. Connect viewer to this node. Okay, we see nothing except the hole. That's okay, we'll correct it easily. Inside of the Rota node, we're outputting only alpha information. If we now connect only to the Rota node and see what we have in the alpha channel, we see that the line is there, the information is there. Activate color channels, so we output red, green and blue channel information. So we have it. I will press O on my keyboard to hide those controllers, this red line in the viewer, so I see better the line. And in the stroke tab, I will first adjust the brush hardness, which will make this line a little bit less blurry. Okay, let's say 0.6 works. I also can make this line bigger, like fatter or smaller. And 17 will do. And this is the parameter that needs to be animated. The visible portion start. The end is representing how the line is growing. Halfway, and if we change it, the line is kind of growing. We need it to come out of nothing. We start with 0, 0, and somewhere on the frame 5, let's say, let's set up a keyframe. The animation will start over here. Let's come somewhere here. So it's fully growth. And a few frames afterwards, set up a keyframe on this visible portion. That parameter will be responsible for the end of this line now coming to the very beginning, so it's disappearing. First keyframe equals 0. And let's go to somewhere close to the end, something like that, and put value of 1. And let's preview what's going on all together. Correct the color of the line. Let's select something more fun. And also, what's important is to smooth out this animation a little bit. With the node selected, I go to the curve sheet, I select those keyframes, handles appear, and I can smooth out a little bit the beginning and the last point of the animation, so it just, the movement is a little bit more natural. You can play around with this, and there is no perfect formula. Basically, whatever feels better to you. If you pull some handles too much, maybe the movement becomes too fast or too slow in the beginning. Just go with your feeling, you know, whatever feels better for you. As you can see in the final animation, I added a little touch to the line so that it appears in front of the hero at some point, faking the illusion of volume. It's extremely simple. We can see in our node tree that we join our triangle, the Rota node, on top of everything. So here is the merge node that has hero on top of the background, and on top of that comes the line. And we need to mask out to make so that only one line of the edges is placed on top of the hero and all the rest stays behind him. We'll do it by first placing all the line behind the hero. I will just deactivate the node that adds the hero currently to the background. I have the background, then the line merged, and I will merge over the hero one more time with one more merge node. And yet still one line on top of the hero is missing. I will simply repeat the same trick. I will place the line again on top of everything. Connect my viewer here. Now I see the line on top, and I will simply mask this portion of the triangle with the Rota node, and I will feed it as a mask to this merge node. Connect the mask input of the merge node to the Rota node. Here we have it. The upper part of the triangle is behind the hero, and this edge is on top of it. You may need to go through to check if this mask is looking alright throughout all the animation, but I think in this case it's perfectly fine. We can get rid of the garbage outside the image frame, and we can move on. So it's almost done. To keep it concise and clear, I will not go in depth on how I made the shadows of the objects. You can see it if you download the project. However, it was pretty simple. In case of a rock, it's just a solid with a slightly darker blue color and a mask that I merged with the rock. And in case of a hero, it's just a reflected copy of the image that serves as a mask to the same dark blue solid merged over background. And in the end, I'd like to add a few comments regarding the alpha in the stars. As soon as we activated alpha channel in the noise node, we resolved the problem of stars not being presented in alpha. However, they're not exactly the same. I let it be, I like the stars anyway. It would be fair to say what happened. Well, it happened because information in alpha differs from the information presented in RGB channels, and Natron of course allows you to fix it, to take this RGB information and use it as alpha. Here are the steps that I would take. Add 3 shuffle nodes, one for each of the color channels, red, green and blue. Connect it with both of its inputs to the final stars node, H extent in this case, and each of them will put one of the color channels into alpha. After join them together with just one merge node, you can output just alpha in this case. And finally, connect one more shuffle node with its B input to the main stars stream, to the node tree where the stars are outputting information below the stream, and connect its A input to the recently created merge node. And inside of this shuffle node, choose your alpha to be alpha from the A input. If you now connect your viewer to this shuffle node and switch between alpha and color channels, you'll see they are exactly the same. Hope you enjoyed this video and found something new for you. If so, hit the like button, subscribe, and most importantly, keep animating.